Кризовому медіа-центрі. Зараз говоритимемо на тему «Тюрма за український прапор». Хто
Current our briefing is devoted to the topic prison for the Ukrainian flag. Who persecutes Volodymyr Balukh? We have Olha Skrypnyk, chairman of the Crimean human rights group, Tetiana Pechonchyk, chairman of the Human Rights Information Center, Daria, Svyrydova, lawyer of the Ukrainian Helsinki Human Rights Center, Oleksandr Darakchy, head of the Department of Criminal Proceedings of the Crimean Prosecutor's Office. Good afternoon, dear journalists. Thank you for attention to important topic. Today we devote this briefing to the destiny of the 44th Crimean political prisoner of Kremlin. Volodymyr Balukh is a farmer from Crimea who resided in Svyrydova district in Crimea. And from the very beginning, he expressed his disagreement and unhappiness with the occupation, and from the very beginning of occupation, he raised Ukrainian flag on his house. And that flag remained in place till the moment when he was imprisoned. Very soon, the authority representatives started to persecute and to intimidate Volodymyr for his sympathies to Ukraine, for his open position, which he openly expressed. He supported Ukraine, and consecutively he expressed his pro-Ukrainian views. Despite that attempts to intimidate him, he never removed the Ukrainian flag from his house. In result of this disconsent to comply with the requirements of Crimean occupational authorities, during the years 2015-2016, he was subjected to civilian persecution. Then the criminal responsibility was imposed upon him. He was imposed several hundreds of correction works. He was sentenced to correction works, but again, this has not tamed him, and then he was informed that he would be deprived from freedom and imprisoned. But despite all that attacks and the persecutions, Volodymyr never removed his flag. Moreover, he pulled a dress plate on his house that there was the street of the Heavenly 100 Heroes. This step again provoked persecutions and a stream of intimidations from Russian occupational authorities. This was followed by a series of searches in his house, which were absolutely unlawful. Each time they required to remove the flag, then the authority representatives tried to intimidate him. During the last search in his house, the Ukrainian national flag and the plate Heavenly 100 Heroes Street was removed. Then Volodymyr was faced with the accusation that there was a weapon or arms stored on the roof of his house. Suddenly, the law enforcers found found a gun and the bullets, and very soon, in June this year, a judge of Razdolensky District Court sentenced Volodymyr Balukh to 3 years and 7 months of imprisonment, with the only accusation that there was only in response to the fact that he kept the Ukrainian flag on his house. We believe that all those persecutions as to Volodymyr are related to the fact of his public oppression to occupation. I would like to publicize today a document which was used as a pretext for the church, for the search. In October, for example, 2016, one judge decided that operational and investigational activity should be carried out in the building where Volodymyr resided, based on a suspicion that Volodymyr stored some arms or weapons in the house and planned to use it for the terrorist act. But the search, nevertheless, was postponed actually for 40 days. Thus, the suspicion about terrorist act could wait for 40 days when those people decided to have a search in the house of alleged offender, that is in Volodymyr's house. We cannot imagine that a person who is systemically persecuted by authorities, who systemically witnesses regular searches from law enforcement agencies in the house, that this person would decide to keep some guns or weapons in a house. So all this forces us to express doubts that he is so silly to keep weapons in the house. We have compiled two claims to the European Court of Human Rights. Moreover, the court decision made on August 4th this year is under our monitoring, and if it won't be repealed, we will again file a claim to the European Court. Unfortunately, we have to confess that our actions aimed at protection of the Crimean activists from persecutions, they are not always efficient. So today we would like to mention other aspects of persecutions. Balukh was sentenced in line with Article 222 of the Russian Criminal Code. Good afternoon, dear journalists. I'm Olha Skrypnyk from Crimean Human Rights Protection Group. We monitor this case. Many of us are familiar with Volodymyr Balukh, and we have huge respect to this person who had enough dignity and courage to counteract Russian occupation. First of all, we tried to identify those persons who were involved into the case against him, who participated in creation of fake documents. Unfortunately, in this case, like in many other cases of political prisoners, the judge and the court fully ignores position of the the advocate, of a lawyer in the court, and sometimes even falsify facts in order to satisfy Russian legislation. For example, decision about the search. When Balukh had the search, the latest search in his house, there was only he and his mother in a house. He was locked in a room. His mother was detained in another room. There were no other people except policemen who found who allegedly found the weapons. Moreover, the witness of a search appeared later, and that person is a drunk addict, and he was definitely drunk when in course of some previous searches he participated as a witness. When Volodymyr lawyers tried to liberate him from prison and to request home arrest for him, now we know those people who are involved into persecution of Volodymyr Balukh, both Russian citizens and former Ukrainian citizens who became servants of occupants and joined the Russian side. First of all, Volodymyr Balukh, who is from Russian security service, and who filed the Hazbut Ahri Muslim case in Bashkiria in Russian Federation. Then Sergei Voronin is another participant of the persecuting side. When then advocate requested to interrogate Volodymyr Voronin, the judge rejected this request. Then Lukianov, who is the officer of FSB, then Zabara, former law enforcement officers of Ukrainian police who joined Russian forces, then Lyudmila Borytska, a judge who made decision, then those who allowed searches in the Balukh's house, then those who decided about detention, Volodymyr Sklerov, Anatoly Osachenko, Belashev, and Bedritska. All those persons are former Ukrainian citizens who remained in Crimea, and now they are Russian judges. One of the prosecutors, we know the prosecutor who requested 5 years of prison for Balukh. Because actually they persecute Volodymyr for 222 for storage of arms and weapons, and Article 222.1. This paragraph provides for responsibility for storage of explosive ordinances. This allows the prosecutors to request longer imprisonment for the offender. And again, the Russian Federation plans to relocate Volodymyr to Russian Federation. Then another responsible persons who are former Ukrainian citizens, many times they were invited to court, like Evgen Bobrov, Oleksandr Lupatin, Konovalov, and some others, like Didek Olga Ukhina. She is a citizen of Ukraine, and she is the informer of police. And some other persons who were witnesses in the court, but they made conflicting statements. And for example, the number of the real quantity of charges or cartridges for guns found in the Volodymyr's house roof. We were thinking how to bring to responsibility all those people. As of today, Volodymyr Balukh remains in pre-court detention in Simferopol. When he was detained, first he remained in the pre-court detention in Razdolensky district, and from the very beginning, the officers, the police officers, they called him the rights actor, activist, Bandera activist, etc. But Volodymyr informed that the most depressive thing for him is the fact that even having enough courage, he feels that his mother is very much depressed with the loss of her son, just like it happened with her husband, who was repressed by the Soviet authorities. And with this, I would like to give the floor to Tetiana Pechonchyk. As we can see, the whole machinery of the Russian law enforcement agencies were involved into compilation of a case against him, fake case against him. And all this was done because of the fact that he wanted to deliver the opinion that Ukraine is a territory of Ukraine, and put Ukrainian national flag on the roof of his house. Thus we identified those people who were involved into persecution of Volodymyr, and other people who were involved in persecution of 43 more Ukrainian political prisoners who currently are persecuted by Kremlin. So now we would like to describe our actions that we would like to take as human rights activists to protect the human rights of the political prisoners in Russian Crimea. So we mentioned claims to the European Court of Human Rights. Also, we requested the Crimean prosecutor's office to carry out full investigation and persecute, even in absence, the persons who were involved in the persecution of Volodymyr in Crimea. Then it is important that Ukraine would include people participating in persecution of our political prisoners in Crimea into the list of Ukrainian sanctions. Also for us, it's important to inform the world about such cases, and we try to inform international community about situation with Ukrainian political prisoners in Crimea. And today we will disseminate notes among the embassies of the EU, the United States, Switzerland, America, Australia, etc. We will request additional personnel sanctions as to those who are involved in such politically motivated persecution. Unfortunately, we have to recognize that the process of liberation of our political prisoners remaining in Crimea had almost hand on, and there is almost a year now when Russia released our people last year, in summer last year. And moreover, during this last year, Russia filed new cases against political prisoners. So we should remind to everybody about this fact and try to stir up this work. Now I would like to give the floor to representative of the prosecution office of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea. He will inform you about their actions. Good afternoon. I would like to mention that the Prosecutor's Office of the Crimean Autonomous Republic has filed a case and carries out investigation in line with Articles 146, 162 of the Criminal Code of Ukraine. The objective in investigation of this criminal case is to collect facts and evidences as to the case in which Volodymyr Balukh is persecuted, and to assess the actions of so-called occupational judges and enforcement agencies. As of now, we have collected all personal data and identification details about the participants of these persecutions in Crimea, and preliminary we had filed a case on the state treason for one of the judges for his previous actions. And now the case of Balukh will add another case of state treason to the personal records of this Crimean judge. So we think that finally we will properly classify all those things.
Oleksandr Gudinka, 24th channel. You said that Mr. Balukh needs medical assistance. So today, all illnesses deteriorated, and also this is about heart attack and malnutrition, and also his health deteriorated, and the lawyer visited him, and after this he was provided with medical assistance, injections, and also there is high level of moisture and lung diseases may start, and also now we have summer and the weather is hot. There is no air conditioning, and that's why heart diseases progress. And also about prisoners that are in prison, it is difficult to provide medicines to prison. These medicines can be handed to the prison, for example, analgin or antibiotics also is difficult to provide. And if there is a disease of internal organs, so these people should be provided with antibiotics. So the people that are in prison, they need medical check in order to establish proper diagnosis. And Balukh is in prison for 8 months, and his relatives tried to provide antibiotics, but law enforcers rejected these medicines, and they can only use tetramon, and they cannot get any other assistance. So all political prisoners who are in the territory of Crimea, the majority of them are in Simferopol detention facility, and the authority of Simferopol say that there are systemic problems with provision of medical assistance in the territory of detention facilities, those people who are detained. So, for example, Ombudsman of Crimea on human rights, nominated by Russian Federation, and one of her reports about human rights in Crimea said about the problems of systematic non-provision or problems with provision of medical help to old people who are detained. And also she informed about 20 cases of death in the detention facility because medical help was not provided, or some diseases were not treated that led to the death of people. Next question, please. RTR news outlet. The question about prosecutor. Artem Chego's court hearing continues, and prosecutor's office says that there will be witnesses and some people will be punished for state treason. How it will happen, and to law, also to activists. And there was a search in Crimea today. So who does this? And if you have such an information, please. About Artem Chego's, 3 weeks ago, I provided an answer in the interview, and I said that law enforcers and judges who illegally acted in relation to Mr. Chego's, we will inform them on suspicion, and the term was until the end of August, and I would like to say once again that until the end of August, the suspicion will be informed. So now the investigation is ongoing, and in the end, at the end of August, we will name these people. Tsakov, Kavititi, is this correct? These are the deputies of the Supreme Council of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea who were informed on suspicion. In absentia, they are suspected in state treason. These are the witnesses that provided evidence in the occupied territory in this criminal procedure on Artem Chaygo's case in the temporarily occupied territory of Crimea. And about the second question, I would like to add what we know about the search. As we know, so the search was done illegally, and law enforcers, they came to carry out a search, but a person felt ill, and that's why the law enforcers left. But repressive machine continues to work, and today we should understand that there is also the case of 26th of February, and Artem Chaygo will be provided with the final word in court hearing, and this process in one political case of the 26th of February now also heard, and also there is also a case of Karametov. This is an elderly person. He was detained yesterday for his protest, and also today, now, when we are speaking here, there is a court hearing ongoing for disobedience to law enforcers. He was brutally detained and put in a police vehicle because he protested, and they say about disobedience. And Volodymyr Balukh also was prosecuted for disobedience in the framework of administrative case. First, he was brought to administrative responsibility because of disobedience. So this is a procedure how they do it in Crimea while prosecuting these people. 1+1. Question to prosecutor's office. What about the number of suspicions concerning fake prosecution and these illegal court hearings? So what is the number of those suspicions? And we heard about there are cases of Umerov, Hubisokri, so there are many other cases. Did you identify those people who provided false evidence? And also, please introduce yourself. Darakchy Oleksandr Georgievich, head of Criminal Proceedings Department of the Prosecutor's Office of Crimea. So, concerning law enforcement officers and judges, we are now more than 320 suspicions. So now evidence are collected in order to bring them to special pre-trial hearing and trial in absentia. And about criminal procedures concerning political prisoners, you've mentioned Umerov, Chaygo, and others. I would like to state that all those facts are reviewed by the Crimean Prosecutor's Office. We have a pre-trial investigation. There are more than 120 facts like this, and in these criminal procedures recently, about 2 months ago, we started to get some evidence from the law enforcers and judges who directly committed crimes concerning our citizens. Why I say about this term? because for more than 2 months we got this evidence, and now answering your question, suspicions are being prepared for these persons. So we may say that in the recent future, we believe that in Chigu's case, we will have such first suspicions. So now, at the moment, there are no suspicions in these cases. Do you have other questions? And what about lawyers and the defense lawyers? Are they efficient? Maybe this is a question to you. I would like to state, in the majority of cases, only due to activists and lawyers, these people, they represent the defenders in Crimea, and due to them, we got evidence. And answering your question, I would like to say that defense lawyers really contribute to investigation and contribute to collection of evidence. Also about the defense lawyers who defend our compatriots in Crimea. So these are high-profile lawyers who defend them. So if we speak about Volodymyr Balukh, he has 3 lawyers, among them renowned lawyers of Russia, those who defend Vladimir, and they defended Oleksandr and Mr. and Mrs. Dinza, and each time they attend court hearing and they defend him, 3 of them. They have a clear professional position, but the court ignores everything, as well as prosecutors, and they prove the facts of falsification. And in one of the complaints provided by the defense, 20 pages, they provided all the facts that this case was falsified, and they provided the names and all the details, but the court ignored this. So our lawyers do everything possible in order to help, and for lawyers it is really difficult to work in Crimea. We should understand this. And the proof of this is that in January this year, Emil Kurbedinov, a renowned lawyer, was detained. So we see that there is great pressure for the lawyers. So they are in the zone of risk. And we see that Emil Kurbedinov and any other lawyer can become a victim and become a prisoner, because they protect people who really need this. So this year, this trend of persecution and pressure on lawyers is a real threat for the protection of human rights. Do you have other questions? If there are no, we will hope that in this case, but it is difficult to believe so, but we hope for good results in this case. If there are no other questions, this is the end of